A lot of people think that cartoons are starting to become ugly. I gotta watch this video and see if I agree.
Are cartoons actually ugly now? It's rhetorical, don't worry, you don't need to answer.
I think they are. I'm just gonna answer right now.
I hope you studied. Recently, I've been seeing a lot of discourse online, centered around the idea that the cartoons of today look way worse compared to the older ones. And I mean older ones in the most vague way possible. Because there's never really been a definitive era that people are unanimously referring to. Some are talking about the 80s, some the 90s, or the 2000s. There really is no consistent time frame. Now, this isn't exactly a new argument or anything. It's actually been a talking point for years. Mainly circling back to this lame as hell template that can be so easily disproven through the fact that whoever made it literally had to draw the characters off the model just so that it would fit their point.
I don't count those. Those aren't when it started to go overboard, like recently. Like, why is everything 3D? I was just watching the Proud Family reboot, and it was a good show. Like, I liked it. It was funny, but the animation was just off. I don't know if that should be the goal. Like, 3D's cool, but I'm just not feeling it. I'm not feeling the rent. I don't know. There's just something about it that's off. And it shouldn't be off compared to a 2002 show. It's kind of crazy.
I don't know, dude, they might actually be onto something. I tuned into Family Guy last night and look what they've done! What makes this current discussion different, however, is that it's not simply about how all cartoons today look to see him, but instead that they're all ugly. You may be asking yourself where this has come from, and if you give me a second, I can show you. Jeez. Recently, a video was uploaded by a guy called Scott Creamer titled Cartoons Are So Ugly Now, where he discusses why cartoons are so ugly now. Who would have guessed?
Tell me
and I saw a bunch of people on Twitter trying to argue about why this guy is wrong with his assessment.
14.5k likes, that's Twitter.
He has no right to even give his views on the topic, since he has no experience working in the industry.
Like what?
Or at the very least that his opinion doesn't hold very much weight because of this. And before we get into this, let me make it clear that I have nothing against this guy and I have nothing against this person. I know nothing about either of them and have no intent to try to change their minds about this. They both just had an opinion on the internet. And I know to some that might as well be the end of the world. But I simply thought this was an interesting topic that I wanted to further discuss beyond the limited space of a tweet. I gotta say this because I'm well aware this video is gonna be posted around by people who haven't watched it, just because of the thumbnail and title. And if you see that, then
the title is a question. Look at it.
Hi.
It's not even saying that they're ugly.
Tweeted before watching the video. Nothing to say, just wanted to point it out. Okay, bye. Subscribe, by the way. Let's get to 500k. What you meant to say here, right?
Give my man to 500k.
Is it true, though?
Is
there any merit to what this guy has to say? Because, spoiler warning,
I need that
there actually is. And I think to dismiss this by saying he has no experience does nothing but immediately shut down any kind of discussion. I think ultimately we gotta remember, cartoons are made for a general audience. So if a general audience, like Scott, thinks your cartoon looks ugly, then that's not to be brushed off or overlooked. So let's get into the topic of cartoons being uglier now, and find out what the truth actually is. Now let's begin this discussion by first going over Scott's video, to see what examples he used, why he believes they're ugly, and why the cartoons of yesteryear were better. When I hear what was said about the video itself, it makes me question if anyone actually watched it, because I did, and the guy really doesn't say anything that controversial. If anything, I could sum up the video with 2 points. 1, the title is very hyperbolic and not true at all, and 2, the video itself? Yeah, I agree with him on what he says about the cartoons he discusses for the most part.
People don't want to be watching videos, I guarantee.
Like you said,
thumbnail is the name. I mean, title and thumbnail the name of the game. They're going to
clarifying that he has no knowledge of being in the animation industry, and that everything he's about to say is his own opinion. And then he goes on to talk about 3 recent cartoons: SpongeBob's Camp Coral, the recent CGI Rugrats reboot, and the live-action Fairly OddParents. And I think
a lot of people complained
the opinion he has. His main point about Camp Coral is that visually it's a mess and doesn't hold a candle to the original show, which in and of itself got way more stiff and saturated over time. And while I certainly don't agree with his idea that the more dull colors of the earlier seasons were intentional, you know, it was simply a mastering issue.
Yeah, no, that's definitely not a thing.
Which is why the later ones are way more bright, you know, cuts like the middleman.
That makes sense.
But I believe he's absolutely correct.
It's a kid show.
Camp Coral doesn't look appealing. I touched on
Look at that. Like, I don't care. I never worked on cartoons. Look at that, bro.
2D storyboards on a TV CGI budget, which causes a lot of
nasty work.
Like nightmare fuel. A commendable effort on the animators for sure, but this wasn't achieved in the way I'm sure they would have envisioned due to the restrictions. This isn't to mention how inconsistent the lighting looks. Some shots look gorgeous while others appear unfinished, with the shading being this dull and drab gray that makes everything appear way darker than it should be and looks, you know, ugly.
How long have I been ugly, Patrick?
As long as I can remember.
And what can I say about Fairly Otter that isn't
Bro,
already
Patrick is a
apparent from just
top
showing
tier
you a
funny character
screenshot?
in
The big one he
cartoons.
mainly focuses on in the video is the Rugrats reboot.
And I'm glad he did, because if you look at that one, that's the worst one out of the 3 that he mentioned. Golly, that one looks horrible. There's no defending that. There's no defending that. I'm sorry.
Because as I'm sure we all know, the original Rugrats wasn't exactly a looker either. And this is where you start to realize that the blanket term of ugly is way too broad to be applied to an entire medium. It's like me saying live-action movies are ugly. Because the old 90s Rugrats and the new CGI Rugrats
And
are
people
ugly
do
in
that.
two
The Marvel
entirely
movies
different
are all
ways.
ugly to people.
The old Rugrats always
Oh my
felt
God, they don't know how to use
intentionally
colors,
unsettling
and
and gross. That
then
was sort of the style back then.
you can't even see
Especially
anything in
with
a DC
Classy
movie.
Truthful.
It's so
Have you
dark.
seen
Like-
As Told by Ginger? Gross, don't put that on the screen. In regards to the animation itself, it actually looks quite nice. At the very least, there's nothing inherently wrong with it. Babies are disgusting creatures, so it makes sense why they'd be presented that way in a cartoon about them. Whereas in the Rugrats reboot, it's the opposite, where it looks ugly in an unintentional way.
Yeah.
There are definitely things worth praising, like I was surprised at how good the textures were in it. But being made by Nickelodeon, like Camp Coral, it's mainly the same issue. Boring dark lighting that makes everything
that
really
hair.
unappealing.
That hair.
Except unlike Camp Coral, it doesn't even have the expressive visuals to make up for it.
Yeah, no, because
The models
they're
look way
real
more
characters.
restrictive. See, I often see this excuse that 90s cartoons were ugly too.
It's not the same kind of ugly that we're talking about. I'm not gonna lie. It's not. It's just not. It's not. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's not.
The video ends with Scott saying it ultimately doesn't matter since he's not a kid and doesn't watch cartoons, that he doesn't fault the animators at all for any of this, and that he likes the way the Blue's Clues reboot looks.
Like art style versus actual
The
animation.
biggest thing I have
is
against
crazy.
this video is that it comes off incredibly cherry-picked. Like, you can't have the title "Cartoons Are So Ugly Now" and only talk about 3 Nickelodeon reboots. A more accurate title would have been something like "Nick Reboots Are So Ugly"
Reboots
or "Stop
are
Rebooting
ugly.
Classic Cartoons."
I think reboots
Being
are
a
looking
YouTuber
ugly.
as well, I
Almost
understand that
all
there
of
is
them
some
that I've seen
element
are
of the
ugly.
game, you know, flashy titles and thumbnails.
Oh, God.
But I can see why
Oh,
at first
God.
glance people wouldn't be as likely to hear out what you have to say. But saying all that, like I mentioned before, I also don't agree at all with this mentality some have, that his opinion on these specific shows hold any less weight just because he isn't in the industry. And again, this isn't specifically about the person who made the tweet, I'm more so referring to the people who see something like this and immediately go to the guy's video to give him shit for shitting on artists' hard work. I got a little newsflash for you, buddy.
I swear.
Everything that was ever created on God's green earth had work put into it by somebody.
Exactly.
And to say that you're not allowed to
You
point that out
can't
because of it is
critique
just
anything at that point.
dumb to me because
they
where's
worked
the
hard
line?
on it. Like,
is it
because-
only limited to
But
animators
who
at that
did they
point?
make it
Where does
for?
it stop? Can I say you're not allowed to shit on Scott's video because he put hard work into it? Doesn't make sense. If I pay someone to clean my bathroom and they proceed to dip their mop in red paint and smear it around the walls, am I not allowed to vocalize my displeasement with that because they say they worked hard on it? An exaggeration for sure, but I'm more so using it to pose the question of what's okay to shit on and what isn't. I never see these complaints for a show like Family Guy or Big Mouth or The Prince. People shit on those all the time, and I don't recall ever seeing somebody come out like, hey, you shouldn't be allowed to say that because people worked hard on those. I only ever see this point being made when it's about a property that is widely enjoyed like SpongeBob or Rugrats.
I can critique anything I want, and like just because I critique it doesn't mean my opinion is right. But it doesn't make my opinion valid because somebody worked on it. Like that doesn't make any sense.
But why aren't others allowed to have the discussion? Riddle me this, Batman. Am I seriously not allowed to look at a show like The Problem Solvers and say it's ugly? That's not even to comment on the fact that these shows looking the way they do has nothing to do with the animators, and even Scott himself acknowledges this, pointing out how it's all in the executives wanting to make money or being so out of touch as to what people actually want. Me saying that the Rugrats reboot looks ugly says nothing about the animation team and says everything about the time and budget they were probably restricted to while working on it.
The same thing with the CGI problems with Marvel. You can't blame the people that work in CGI when they're being overworked and their deadlines are crazy. You can't blame them. It's the people that work over them that are doing that. So like, yeah, I agree. You can't blame the animators. It's the same with everything. You can't blame the animators.
I seriously think there are people out there who believe that if I were talking to someone in real life and they were like, oh yeah, I worked on Camp Coral, that I'd immediately be like, that show's terrible. You worked on that? It's shit, you know? Let me sit you down and I can lecture you on why you're not doing
aren't
your
real
job
people.
right. Again, this may seem
YouTube
like an
Shorts comments,
exaggeration, but I genuinely see people
swear,
online act like this is the
they're
case.
not real people.
If
They're
anything,
not.
the excuse of people working
NPCs.
hard on it only ever comes off like an insult to me. Like I'm a baby who can't handle saying anything negative on the internet. I'm not animating on Camp Coral general, simply for the joy of creation. I'm doing it because it's a job and I get paid to do it. Now, working on something for money and having care for it aren't mutually exclusive, but I see people act like the folks working on a show like this are doing it out of pure passion, and not because, well, it's a job. A creative job, but a job nonetheless. At the end of the day, I get it. It's not nice to work on something or have a friend work on something and have it be shit upon release.
I agree.
But at a certain point, you have to consider that it's not a personal
but
attack
at the same
and somebody's
time,
just giving their opinion, even if you disagree with their right to say
like,
it.
who cares?
And this all
at
brings
the
us
end
back
of
to
the
the
day.
question I posed at the start of the video. Are cartoons ugly now? And the answer
Some
is...
are.
Well, of course, some of them are, but
Yeah,
ugly cartoons have always
obviously.
existed. And to generalize the entire medium based on the examples where it's clear it's a cause of executive meddling and greed, not only gives a bad name to the shows who have an intentionally ugly style that adds to the vibe and charm, but also is to ignore all the fantastic looking shows that are currently airing.
Some cartoons are really bad, but I feel like it's more the reboots, and that can also be said that the reboots are just cashing in on nostalgia and trying to make money. So they're gonna look ugly at the end of the day, and I agree.
2,000 years later.
What's good, y'all? I had to come back because I got more insight, you feel me? I recorded that video a while back, and recently I've been watching more cartoons. Mostly I've been watching the Owl House and Rick and Morty recently. And like going into these shows, especially the Owl House, I was just thinking like, I'm not gonna like this. Like, no good cartoons have been made past 2015 in my mind. But I went into it not expecting to enjoy it. That show is peak, bro. That show was actually good. Now, I feel like that's what a lot of people now that grew up with the surplus of cartoons that we had, we don't have faith in cartoon makers anymore. But I feel like we just have to give them some credit, bro. They still putting out heat to this day. Obviously, we older now. We're not gonna keep up with all that. But I think it's unfair to judge all of the cartoons with the ones that you see advertised and you say that's trash. I just felt like I needed to give a little more insight. But hey, if you enjoyed this video, here's a video just like it. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, bro. You know what I'm saying?